Welcome back to Movie Guys Improvise. You are listening to
Chill with the Realms.
Jurassic Mark.
and Faerhad Targaryen. Last week, it was our last anime episode, The God of High School. If you haven't caught that yet, what you first need to do is check out Chill with Realms movie link mashup of it. Then check out our review of the first 5 episodes based on his mashup. For this week's episode, we have a mini series recommended to us by Jurassic Mark. It's a 4-hour, 3-episode miniseries known as Dinotopia, which is based off a book series. Before I go into my thoughts about it, Jurassic Mark, you take it away.
Gladly. Well, the story begins with two half-brothers, David and Carl Scott, who are in the midst of a little island-hopping vacation with their father. They're flying about in a small private plane when suddenly the plane goes down and the father goes missing. The two brothers swim to shore and find themselves on a lost island where shipwrecked humans and intelligent dinosaurs have forged a utopic society, or at least so it would seem, that has lasted for thousands and thousands of years. And yes, like Farhad said, this is based on a series of books by James Gurney, who is a illustrator who specialized in archaeological and paleontological illustration. He would accompany people who dug up fossils and dug up ancient human temples and that sort of things, and he would attempt to illustrate their discoveries, and Dinotopia was sort of his brainchild.
Awesome. Okay. So this was a very solid recommendation for this week's episode. And before we dive into it, I have two quick questions for you right from the get-go. The first is, how does the series compare to the books? Because I did a little bit of reading on it on Wikipedia, and I found out that the series is more like a sequel to what happened to the books. So how does the show compare to the books? First question.
Well, I had been reading the books long before the miniseries came out. I think the first book was published in like 1992 or 1993, but yeah, I'd been a long-time fan of the books. And I would say the series is more plot-focused than the books are. The books sort of fall into the mold of old-time adventure stories like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Journey to the Center of the Earth, in that they read like recovered journals. There isn't necessarily an overarching narrative tension. It's rather a series of events described by a character. So they'll say, hey, we went to this weird place, and then we went to this weird place, and then we went here. And there are all these brilliant, just gorgeous illustrations that went with those original books that Gurney had drawn. And those more than make up for any shortcomings that the books might have. But the series, as in the miniseries, is a little bit more character-driven and a little more plot-focused.
Okay, so are you saying that the series is both plot-focused and more character-driven? Because I thought you were saying that the books are more plot-driven and therefore the series is more character-driven. So maybe I...
Well, no. There's a difference between story and plot. I think the classic example is that a story would be something along the lines of the king died and then the queen died, whereas a plot would be the king died and then the queen died of grief. You know, there's a sort of causal link there. And the Dinotopia series, at least the first couple of books, are very much stories. They're explorations of a setting, but there isn't a lot of causality between event A and event B. They're still very good, but this show is more plot-driven in the classical sense. So events build up and off of each other a little bit more fluidly. I wouldn't necessarily say that makes the show better, but it's different.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I know what you're saying in terms of the dichotomy between story and plot. I tried to make that sort of dichotomy back when we were recording our Day After Tomorrow episode. So I kind of see where you're going with that. Okay, cool. Question number 2. At the end of the God of High School episode, you were saying how the series was something you watched way back. So you hadn't watched it since then. So how did your rewatch stack up to how you remember it?
I think it holds up pretty well. There are a couple of things I noticed that I wasn't overly fond of, but on the whole, I think this held up phenomenally well. It still looks great for a series that came out 18 years ago. I know it won an Emmy for Best Special Effects.
Yeah, got it. Okay, yeah. So I feel similarly as well. Like I said, this was a very solid suggestion, well, very solid subject for this week's podcast. So before I dive deep into my feelings of it, Realms, I think both of us, like, this was our first time watching it. So what were your first impressions?
Yeah, this is definitely my first watch on it. And honestly, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, damn, I wish they actually made us watch this type of movie in school. Like, I feel like something like this, it would have been a really good excuse to miss a whole week's worth of, the regular schooling plans that they had for us. And it'd have been something that got me more interested in, dinosaurs way back when. Because this was a really visually good movie, in my opinion.
Same here. And after watching this, I feel like this would be a great series for kids because there's barely any cursing. There's no like sexual elements. There's not a whole ton of like graphic violence. And the story is very like it's easy to follow. And it is something that like people our age could also enjoy, but children definitely could check it out and it would be a good show for them to watch as well. So yeah, I wanted to talk about some of the actors who played because JM, I remember that was another point that you brought up at the end of the God of High School episode. But before we do that, I just want to get out of the way my feelings about the CGI because some people who are really nitpicky, they'll look at the CGI and tear it to pieces because if you compare it to like a Hollywood blockbuster budget or even like a higher budget television show from like something that's more modern, they'll say it definitely does not stack up. And I feel like it's fine. Like the CGI is good. Yes, it's not the best, but like I'll get to like a quote unquote the best CGI in a second. But the CGI was good enough for me that as I was watching it, it didn't take me out of the experience. Like I was convinced that Waterfall City was a real place in this universe. I was convinced that Canyon City was a real place in this universe because of the presentation and the cinematography that the show was doing. In the same way that we felt, or the way I felt with Forbidden Planet. If you compare the special effects to that movie to obviously much more recent movies, it doesn't compare. But watching just the presentation of that movie, it was good. Just talking about what we saw in Dinotopia, the reason it doesn't really bother me that the CGI isn't as good as what we would see in, for example, Jurassic World or Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which are the two most recent films in the Jurassic Park film franchise, even though the CGI budget for those movies are it's obviously better than what we saw here, it's still not real. It's not good enough that like that it's that you can't tell that it's real or not. Whenever I watch those movies, I can tell like yeah, so the CGI. I can tell that it's CGI, but it's very, very good CGI, but it's still not real. You know that. Like when we're watching Avengers Infinity War or Avengers Endgame and Thanos is on the screen, he looks very real, but you still know that he's not real. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's important to bear in mind with this movie is the fact that this was a made for TV movie that came out 18 years ago. So, of course, the effects aren't going to look as good as, say, the special effects on the last Jurassic World movie. That being said, I do think in some ways it was a little bit more realistic because in the Jurassic World movies, they make dinosaurs do all these like physically impossible stunts. I remember in the fight in the first Jurassic World movie where the Indominus fighting the T-Rex, you've got like a 6-ton theropod or meat-eating dinosaur grabbing another one by the scruff of the neck and throwing it, defying all laws of physics. And that almost took me out of the big fight scene. Whereas in this movie, I feel like at least the animals moved somewhat realistically.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, this show is called Dinotopia, but
Mm,
honestly,
mm,
it was really about the human characters involved, which is fine.
mm.
I like that it was very human character focused, but They also did a decent amount of world building, but not enough to make me feel like the show was about the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs were kind of just like a backdrop. Like it was part of this universe. They were decorating this universe, showing that in this society, dinosaurs are there the way both animal wildlife would there and animal like domestication would be there. Because I don't think we saw any domestic animals in the show at all. But that's pretty much what it was. It was a utopia with dinosaurs instead of modern day animals. But the show really wasn't about dinosaurs. It was still about people, in my opinion. I don't know if that makes sense as well, but that's how it felt looking back.
Well, it's a partnership. I mean, these are intelligent dinosaurs. You've got dinosaur senators, and you've got my man Zippo, the librarian, the most neurotic dinosaur since Rex from Toy Story. And then you got 26. You know, they gave these dinosaurs personalities, and I think they showed that they're sort of equal partners in this world with the humans, you know, on equal footing. I think that was the intention, at least.
So one thing I will say up first, in the first episode, I was confused at what time period the show was trying to emulate because
Mm.
they used the term bus. And bus, the way I remember it, is a vehicle at the very end of the
Mhm.
day that people use for public transportation.
Mhm.
And the gentleman at the, I guess, the whatever town it was called at the very beginning of the show, who tells them to take a bus from wherever they are to Waterfall City, says that yeah, the next bus leaves tomorrow morning, but the bus is actually a ride on a dinosaur. I think it was the Brachiosaurus. I think.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. And on the way there, Carl is talking to Marion, who is the daughter of the mayor of Waterfall City, who we meet later on in the show. And they're having this conversation. And in the beginning of the show, I was kind of on Carl's side because he said something along the lines of, "Listen, I love my dog back home, but he's not getting a driver's license." And I'm of that mindset too, in that, yeah, I'm all about like animal rights. At the same time, I've always been of the opinion that human life is always a bigger value than animal life because animals can't do as horrible as the things humans can do. We are the only species who care for other species as well. For that reason, I was more siding with what Carl was saying. However, this show was showing us that these are not just typical dinosaurs. They can evolve to read books and speak like our man Zippo here. So because of that reason, for this universe, I was siding more with the mindset that both David and Marion had, which were that humans and dinosaurs are equal in Dinotopia anyway.
Mm.
But if we were to have seen that dinosaurs are just animals and nothing else essentially, then I would have been on Carl's side. And I did honestly agree with Carl with some, but not all, of the events that took place throughout the 3 episodes.
Yeah. Realms, do you have any comments, buddy? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, let me get a second to gather my thoughts real
Mm.
quick. Yeah, it's complicated with that because I even in real life, I see people that care more about animal safety, animal care against animal abuse, stuff like that. But then things happen to humans, and they kind of avoid it, and they don't really feel as compassionate about it. So
Mm.
it's kind of complicated, but within the movie, I can see both sides, especially in Dinotopia, because of course, you said Zippo, he's able to talk like a regular human being, and they're able to communicate. They have their own writing, so it makes sense that they can care about the dinosaurs the same way that they can care about another human being within the show.
Exactly. And I wonder if the book expanded on this and there were several dinosaur characters who could also speak. Zippo was the only one, and I think he was that character who would connect the audience to the dinosaur population. Like he kind of represented that for the whole show. But
Yeah, he was actually my favorite character in the show.
yeah, I bet he was a lot of people's favorites. I think it was between him and I actually kind of liked David for several parts of the show as well. So
Mm.
I
Yeah,
had
Zippo was. Oh, go ahead, man.
my bad. I just had like off and on like and dislike for both characters. there was
Mm.
there was times where I liked them and times where I didn't.
Yeah, Zippo was definitely my favorite as a kid. And rewatching it now, I have to admit my really only critique of the series is that, yeah, David and Carl are occasionally kind of unlikable in the show. Like they both have their moments, but there are times when they both really got under my skin, particularly David in episode 1. I don't know if that's the fault of the actor or the dialogue. I know the actor's won awards for some of his other roles. He was on that show Prison Break. But, like, I don't know if you guys remember in episode 1, he's flat out saying, "I'm glad Dad's gone." And I just remember thinking, well, screw you, David. Jeez. Who talks like that?
I really think he said that in the heat of the moment. He was arguing
Mm.
with Carl's when he said that. So I don't think
Yeah.
he really meant that, to be honest. But
I don't think.
The plane?
Yeah. I think you could have articulated that point without spelling it out for the audience. Like, you can hint that that's what the character's thinking without making him so blunt. I think this was a writing issue, but it's not a huge problem given the scope of the story, but it is something that did kind of bug me, at least in episode 1.
so I definitely do agree with you that both of the brother characters did things that got under my skin as well. And we'll get to that in a sec. But what I first wanted to talk about were the actors themselves that were in the show. So, as you said, Wentworth Miller plays David Scott, who was most famous for being on Prison Break. I have to be honest, I recognized him from a Mariah Carey music video called "We Belong Together." I don't know what that says about me, but that's where I recognize the dude from.
Hey, no shame in that, man. You do you.
And the dude who played Carl, honestly, I didn't recognize him from anything. Tyrone Laetso, I think that's how you say his name. And the most famous actor, I think, that most of us probably recognize was David Thewlis, who played Cyrus Crabbe. And he was, of course, Professor Remus Lupin in Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and for the rest of the Harry Potter film franchise as well.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, except here he doesn't have a mustache. Maybe he got a stubble. I don't know. But...
yeah, he doesn't look exactly the same, but yeah, I remember him, of course, from his distinctive acting style and from the way he articulated. He was the first character in Dinotopia that we met, and I couldn't even really tell from the beginning that this dude was the guy who would end up being the antagonist. The fact that he kept calling dinosaurs the Scalies, I didn't pick up on that in the beginning of the show, to be honest.
For me, since the beginning, he was kind of iffy. I never fully trusted him.
I mean, the first thing we see him do is blow up an archaeological site with dynamite. Like, that's not exactly the kind of thing that inspires confidence in most people.
Nah.
Yeah.
He was definitely speciest, if that's a term.
Yeah, we find out scaly is a slur.
Nah.
Yeah, that's a good point. For me, like the fact that he used dynamite to blow up an archaeological site, yeah, that's totally extreme. But since he's the first person we come across in Dinotopia, I wasn't sure like what the norm is there, to be honest. But yeah, anyway, we do find out that he is through and through kind of a scumbag. And I was texting you guys throughout this past week, telling you that as I was watching the show, I really couldn't get a read on him. Like, what side is he on? And we might as well talk about his character arc now, since we have been talking about him. So he's in the court. He's in the court with the audience and the mayor there. I really don't like the mayor character, but we'll get to him in a sec. But he accuses the mayor of not being honest to the people of Waterfall City, and then he gets banished from the city itself. But eventually, we see him back in the city again, and it's as if he's not hiding. He's like there in plain sight. So was it just like a temporary exile, or was it that the city watch just stopped caring that he was around or something? That wasn't totally clear to me.
He might have just been lying to Carl about getting banished.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, the mayor never said, like, like you are banned forthwith from Waterfall City or anything like that. So that's
Mm.
true. He could have just been lying to
Yeah.
Carl. And speaking of that, okay, there are two more things that solidified this dude as obviously the villain. The first is when he knocked Zippo out and then threw him into that bag in a wheelbarrow and then dumped him into what looked like the sewers, right? Was I'm thinking that's supposed to be like the sewer system that he got dumped into. And
Mhm.
my
I actually, can I comment on that real quick?
of course.
Going back to when Mark was saying that there aren't a lot of unrealistic things that happen in the movie, and as opposed to like Jurassic Park, this was one of the parts where I was like, yo, he didn't hit him that damn hard. Like, it didn't seem like that was enough force to actually knock out a dinosaur. That was the only one that I was like, that it stuck out to me.
At least he's one of the smaller dinosaurs, but
I know.
yeah. But no, dude, I was traumatized as a kid watching Zippo A almost get eaten in episode 1 and B get knocked out with a cane in episode 2. Like when I was 12 years old, I used to have nightmares about poor Zippo just getting thrashed around in this series.
I feel you. I feel you. I was like, damn,
Oh,
they gonna kill off my favorite person in the show, my favorite
I
character.
know, right? It's like, is this Game of Thrones? Like, what the hell's going on? Game of Bones. There we go. Yeah,
Oh man.
because fossils.
But yeah, the fact that Krabs did that at all to Zippo, and then later on, of course, that wasn't the end of Zippo or Cyrus, but
Mm.
it made me think, okay, so Zippo is good friends with Marion, he's good friends with David and Carl, so how loyal are they to him? Because if someone did that to a friend of mine, like a really good friend of mine, I would never trust that person again. This dude knocked my friend out and left him for dead. And the fact that he did that was never really brought up with anybody else. He never said to his friends that, hey, guess what happened to me? Cyrus knocked me out and left me for dead.
No,
And
that was brought up
but it
Yeah,
wasn't but
in the
was it
house
ever
it
arrest.
was
It
brief.
was in the
It was
house
brief.
arrest scene. It was brought up. Yeah,
He was letting him in the door, and then they're just
yeah.
like, no, go ahead, let him in. And he
right,
was
right.
telling
Okay,
them,
so
oh, he did this to me.
it was, yeah, it
Mhm.
was referenced, but what I'm trying to get at is nobody says anything to Cyrus about it. Like, Cyrus, how could you do that to my man Zippo? We're never gonna trust you after that. In fact, we hate you and we want to kill you for trying to leave Zippo for dead. That's what I mean. Is that like he kind of just gets away with it. He doesn't face any consequences or repercussions, even from Zippo's own friends. And that's why I'm questioning. Like, I know that they're loyal to Zippo, but why do they not hold Cyrus accountable for what he did to Zippo? That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't know why, David or Marion didn't say anything, but as far as like Carl had already had a run-in with him at that point. So I understand why he didn't say anything, but everybody else, that makes sense as to question it.
Yeah, it was probably just due to the extreme circumstances because they had to get all the sunstones, and Cyrus was the only guy with means to access the world beneath. So they probably made sort of an uneasy alliance just to accomplish this mutual goal. But yeah, I never got the impression that either of the boys truly trusted Cyrus. At best, they agreed to work with him because they figured it was their best shot to accomplish a couple of things here and there. But Cyrus is not the kind of guy who commands trust.
In terms of like trusting him and not trusting him goes, the other thing what I didn't understand was, okay, there's a scene of him like putting holes into the boat that Carl was going to use to get off of the island. And we hear him say the reason he was doing that is because he still needs Carl to do something for him and not leave. And when Carl departs and he sees that his boat is sinking, he doesn't immediately think of Cyrus. But when he sees Cyrus again, he accuses, rightfully so, Cyrus of sabotaging his boat. And Cyrus responds by saying, yeah, and you gave me a fake soul stone or something, so call it even. And my immediate thought after that was like, okay, at least, like, first of all, at least Carl knows that he's figured out that it was Cyrus who did that, first of all. But second of all, dude, this guy Cyrus has been telling you and been claiming for the longest time that all he wants to do is help you get off the island along with him. Why would a guy saying that sabotage your way off of it? Shouldn't you be extremely suspicious of that? If I were Carl, I would have been like, matter of fact, why did you do that? you know I want to get off the island. What would you get from forcing me to stay here? Especially because you've been saying you want to get off too. So I would be still really suspicious of him, and he doesn't really question that, other than knowing for sure at that point anyway that he can't trust Cyrus. He doesn't really question, why did you do that? Why did you force me to essentially stay on the island? You know?
I'd have been questioning that because I'd have been like, okay, I have a boat. I'm trying to get off the island. How come you're willing to stay behind? And I was thankful that no matter all the times that they did actually cooperate with him, Carl never fully trusted him. Even from that point where he gave him the fake sunstone.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought you were gonna say the flare gun, because they
No,
did.
no, no.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that was nice of him to give them that, but I was thankful that like even like later on, as they're making like this grand scheme to go get more sunstones, like even then he still didn't trust them, and he took that piece of the boat, the sunstone from the boat or the submarine.
Oh yeah, the little necklace shaped sunstone, right? Well, like the
I
gem
am
one.
Marion's Sunstone, yeah.
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 I mean, yeah, if you have something that you think is rare, it would hold great value to you. But when you find a cave full of it, then the value of it kind of decreases. Well, not the value of it, but it's similarly to, how in Black Panther, everybody who's not in Wakanda thinks that vibranium is a very rare element, but Claus says that they have a mountain full of it and barely scratch the surface. That's basically how I felt seeing that cave full of sunstone, is that they'll never run out of it, you know? Um, More on the sunstones later. What I was thinking was, since we were also talking about Carl transitioning from Cyrus, just to talk about Carl for a second, his character arc is kind of predictable, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I did kind of side with him in the beginning, because his main concern is finding his dad. It's interesting how in the very beginning, I think it was David actually who made the point to say, we don't know that dad is dead. One of them assumes that their dad is dead and is kind of like already starting to grieve, and the other one is saying that like we don't know that yet, you know, because we didn't see what happened. But they kind of bicker about it when they first get there. It starts off kind of like a fish out of water story with the two brothers anyway, but when they get to Waterfall City and they're living with Zippo anyway, at first Carl is saying, I'm giving you a week to decide whether you want to leave the island with me. But then later, he kind of doesn't give David a choice. He's saying, you are coming with me. We're leaving and I'm not leaving you behind, or something like that. And I don't know if that was just something we weren't supposed to pay attention to, or if just something happened that kind of snapped in Carl saying, no, you have to come with me. Because at first he's like, either you're coming with me, like I'm leaving with or without you, you know?
Well, I think it's worth noting that these are two half brothers who haven't really spent a lot of time together, by their own admission. So I don't think they know each other particularly well, and Carl's probably still trying to get the measure of David and vice versa.
Well, that's something else too. Like they mentioned in the beginning how they're half brothers, they were only born months apart, and David was explaining how their father was a very social person or something like that. But did it even matter much in the story that they were half brothers? They could have, story-wise, they could have just been full brothers who weren't that close, you know? I don't think it never really mattered in the story, the fact that they had different mothers.
I don't think it mattered heavily, but I think it did provide a little bit of perspective as to why they were acting the way they were.
Yeah. And how two grown men could see their father so differently.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. So speaking of fathers, since we're basically going character by character, I also want to point out there, I really did not like Mayor Waldo. This dude looked like a clown, okay, and he acted like a clown so much.
His outfit looks a lot like some of the outfits you would see in the James Gurney books. A lot of very flamboyant costumes in these illustrations. I thought the actor who played him was a lot of fun to watch. Like, no, he wasn't the most likable character, but he was entertaining. And actually, I think the side characters were personally way more interesting to me than the three leads. Like Mayor Waldo was fun to watch. I loved the matriarch. Cyrus, bastard though he was compelling. Whereas I thought David, Carl, and Marion were a little milquetoast at times, at least by comparison.
Yes, that is a good point, JM, and I think your argument holds water there. And I would say that, yeah, the actor who portrayed the mayor, yeah, the portrayal was fine. In fact, it was probably really good, the fact that he annoyed the shit out of me whenever he was on the screen. And yeah, the matriarch definitely was also really good. In my opinion, she elevated the series to another level once we got to episode 2 and were introduced to her. And of course, David Thewlis was great because he was probably one of the best actors on the show. Yeah, the leads weren't the best actors, but yeah, and I guess I can see your point there. But on the topic of the character himself, not the the character of the mayor. Okay, so that it's being lore accurate, like sticking to the source material in terms of how he dresses and stuff. Okay, I understand that. But when the two boys when they fought, Carl and David, like what happened was apparently Carl stole the lyrics to Bohemian Rhapsody for like their graduation, and that pisses David off. Honestly, like David has a right to be pissed off about that, but he didn't have to provoke Carl the way he did, and they fought so badly to the point where they fell over the tower and fell into the river. And that's a plot point that I do want to talk about in a second as well, but Mayor Waldo wanted to dismiss it. When Marion was showing so much concern for the boys, he was just like, we searched all around the place, we didn't find them, so it's a lost cause. And that can't be true. I mean, eventually the boys are found, but you didn't really search that hard, and you so easily wanted to just, forget about looking for them. That's really, really irresponsible, I would say, even though they're not citizens of Waterfall City, let alone Dinotopia. To give up so easily, probably just because you don't like them for being outsiders, that was irresponsible, in my opinion. Okay?
Are you talking about at the end when they were looking for them?
No, that's the thing. At the end, they show way more concern, but in the beginning, he barely cared that they went missing, and he was saying it's not even worth looking for them because they're just troublemakers and blah blah blah. I'm in episode 1, not episode 3.
The thing, one of the things that stood out to me in episode 3 when they were looking for them was Marion and Zippo ended up going back to Dinotopia, and I find it weird that they're chasing after David and Carl, but then these two help them escape, and they come back, and nobody bats an eye about it. Nobody tries to press them about helping them escape. They kind of.
Being the mayor's daughter probably has its perks.
What about Zippo, though?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
Because when they initially had them help them out, and they're about to take the submarine and go look for the sunstones, I'm thinking, it's kind of messed up. If they actually find it and they decide to leave, Marion and Zippo, they can't really leave. Like, they're still stuck here to deal with the mess if they find their way out. I guess Marion could go with them, but Zippo would be, fish out of water. He's a talking dinosaur.
Well, I think the plan was to fetch sunstones. It wasn't really an escape plan at that point because the sunstones were failing everywhere.
Right, but they wanted to, or at least Carl wanted to leave. So it's like, if they're your friends, you got them helping you do all this stuff that's, apparently illegal because they had to go to court for it. You're kind of leaving, your friends who are going to be staying here stuck in the dirt, basically.
Yeah, Carl's not great at predicting the consequences of his actions.
Nah. Lucky for them, plot worked out better, but
it worked out. Yeah. We got our happy ending.
I would say what you're talking about, Rams, that to me just reminds me of one of the main issues I had with the 3rd episode, which was pacing issues. Like after Carl and David get into the submarine with Cyrus, the next time we see Marion is when she's back in Waterfall City. So we cut straight to that. We don't see any of the in-between of Mayor Waldo saying, why would you betray me like that? You left with the boys, they're criminals now, they were on house arrest, and you helped them escape. We don't see any of that dialogue, and we also don't see where Zippo was at in all of that as well. So yeah, I would chalk that up to pacing issues. Like scenes like that would have been important to see. Like what happens when Marion and Zippo what's the first thing that happens when they get back to Waterfall City? And we don't really see that. So yeah, that's how I felt about it.
I think we definitely spent a little too much time in the world beneath in episode 3. Personally, I could have done with more time at the surface, because a lot of the world beneath, at least in the show, fundamentally looks the same. Whereas visually interesting things were happening back at the surface. You've got like the swarm of pteranodons coming. I could have done with a little bit more of that.
True. Yeah. Okay. And that was a scene that also kind of confused me. But before going straight into episode 3, I did want to talk about just finishing up on the situation that happened was it the end of episode 1 where they fell over the edge and went into the river? Why did David get so sick? Like, whatever happened to him should have also happened to Carl. Was it the fall that hit him? If it was that, then Carl should also be suffering a concussion or whatever. But it's just David. Like, did he catch pneumonia from being in the river? Then it should have also happened to Carl. I don't like why was he out of it for such a long time? That I didn't really understand.
Yeah, they didn't really visually explain that. Because I was thinking the same thing too. Like, did they land differently or something?
Yeah, they probably could have explained that by saying, oh, David has weak constitutions, which would have made sense for his character. I mean, he's kind of bookish. He's afraid of heights. They could have explained that with just a line of dialogue, but it looks like they didn't.
In hindsight, it would make sense. He fainted because of the height.
Yeah, maybe. He just passed out.
That would actually make a lot of sense. Yeah. That's the first encounter they have with the world beneath when they find like that cave. And then once they are rescued, we are then brought to the Earth Farm, which is the second setting. So that's another thing I really liked about the show is that we see several different settings. It's the first village area that we see, then we see Waterfall City, and then we see the Earth Farm. And that's when we are introduced to the matriarch. And she's a very intelligent woman. She likes to not take shit from people. And I really appreciated her addition to the character roster.
Yeah.
But when she first meets the boys, she says to them that, or she says to Carl that I've heard a lot about you, nothing good. But why, like, if you've only heard bad things, it should only be mostly because of Carl. David never really did anything offensive in Dinotopia, which brings me to a point that we get to later on, or we could just talk about it now. It's just the fact that they both get arrested for things that Carl did. Uno comes to arrest the boys, and most of the charges are things that Carl did. But why is the court of Waterfall City collectively blaming the two of them? Like, David had nothing to do with the alleged theft of the Sunstone, for example. So why is it that he wasn't even there? Like, sure, you can say that maybe they were planning it together or whatever, but David was not even there. He was in Canyon City, I'm pretty sure, that entire time,
Well, David was definitely there for some of the breaches into the world beneath, which they established was a big no-no. But you're right, his charges aren't nearly as serious as Carl's were.
They were the scapegoats.
Yeah.
That's really all that it was. I mean, you could tell that the mayor just didn't like them, but that's another thing. So we see several different settings in Dinotopia, but we only really see three authoritarian figures. There's Mayor Waldo, there's the matriarch, there's Uno, but Uno is not like the mayor of Canyon City. He's more like the lieutenant or the commander of the Skybacks, but he's not like the mayor of Canyon City. They call it a city. I wish we got to see more of the other settings. It's mostly just Waterfall City that we see most fleshed out. But
I mean, we see part of Canyon City.
We do, but is there no court system in Canyon City? Is there no court system in whatever part, like province that the Earth Farm is in? It seems like the only authoritarian figure who runs like a court is the mayor of Waterfall City.
Well, Waterfall City is the capital. It's like getting dragged to the Supreme Court.
I see. Oh, okay. I must have missed the part where they say that Waterfall City was the capital then. Okay. So, okay, there's that. I was touching on the CGI in the very beginning of this podcast, and I would say the only time that the CGI I let it bother me was when we saw like certain parts of the city, like what we would call Main Street of Waterfall City, because I don't know what else to call it. That part was the one that looked a little too cartoonish for me. But yeah, just a little nitpick there on my end.
They did
But
use a lot of real sets though, which was nice.
yeah, they did. And I'm pretty sure 26 was also real sometimes. She wasn't always CGI.
Yeah, in a lot of shots, she was actually brought to life by a puppet that Jim Henson Workshop made.
Jim Henson.
And some of the mosasaurs.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So, touching back to, I just wanted to talk about the matriarch a little more for a second.
Oh, isn't she great?
Yeah, she was like she almost had like a sixth sense, right? It was in episode 2 where she said that she told Marion to keep an eye on David because he's the key to I don't know to solving the problem. I don't exactly remember what she said, but he's the key to the future or something, which he is. We eventually see David flying on what's
Free
his
fall.
free fall, flying on free
Yeah,
fall.
the Pteranodon. Yeah.
He's not the one who puts the sunstone in its spot. It's actually Zippo who does it, but he was the one who delivered it so that they could restore sunspot energy to the city immediately. So he was definitely part of that solution that the matriarch was saying way back in the second episode. So
what I love about the matriarch, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're going to say something?
No,
okay, I was just going to say, what I love about the matriarch, particularly on rewatching the show, is that she's really good at reading people almost immediately. I loved it when she called Carl out. Like whenever Carl would sass, she would have a comeback just instantly, but she never had to raise her voice. She just knew exactly what to say to put him in his place. Like, do you intend to eat our food? Well, yeah. Then you will help us make it. Or that sort of thing. And then when David was sort of ragging on Carl from behind closed doors, she said, yeah, he carries a lot of rage, almost as much as you. She knew exactly what to say to put people in their place. And I loved that about her.
She continued to do that when she returned to Waterfall City and was having dinner with her family. So one thing that I feel like she should have been a little harsher was when Carl swung from the boys' house over to the girl's sleeping quarters. Yeah, I think that's the proper terminology. The girls. Yeah, he could have hurt somebody. Plus, like, I don't know. I feel like that's a little crossing the line there, literally.
Oh yeah, that's creepy as well.
Yeah. The girls were all kind of like they were woken up and they were all like kind of giggling. Yeah, I mean,
they're like, he's a modern day Robin Hood.
I'm surprised Marion wasn't.
Isn't it romantic? No.
No, like because
it was kind of creepy. Yeah.
Yeah, Marion, it seemed like she was turned on by it because he was like, oh, I don't know what you're doing tonight, but, I was wondering if you want to go for a walk. And it looks like they end up skinny dipping. Like they went over to like some water source where it seems like they had no clothes on and then they kissed. The next morning, the matriarch is a little bit bothered by it, but she doesn't really punish either one of them for it. They kind of just get away with it. And on the one hand, I get that Carl is not totally respecting the rules here because he didn't ask to be a part of this society. He's just kind of stuck there. But on the other hand, you got to know when to when to be put in your place, man. What you did there, that wasn't cool. I just gotta say, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, it's daring and it's bad boyish, and sure, maybe some girls like that, but that doesn't necessarily make what you did okay. It's not that big of a deal. It didn't affect the story all that much, but I'm just saying, like, one thing where I feel like the matriarch could have hit a little harder.
High risk, high reward, I guess.
True that. And David obviously, like, yeah, she, like, the matriarch does kind of shut David up because David always feels the need to speak up about certain things. And I was surprised and pleasantly surprised that the matriarch was like, I wasn't talking to you, David, so do me a favor and shut up about this.
Yeah, stop being a little tattletale.
Yeah, that's the thing that does kind of bother me about David, even more so than Carl. He's pretty manipulative when you get down to it. Like, he's always talking crap about Carl behind Carl's back, and only ever to make himself look good, it seems. You know, he seems a little two-faced, particularly in episodes 1 and 2. He grows up a little bit by the end of the show.
I'm guessing. I mean, they're half brothers, but I'm guessing
Hmm.
David might be the younger of the two brothers by months. I don't think they ever specify who's the older one, but it could have been like,
Hmm.
maybe David was born a little bit later, and that's why, and that might be why, the explanation of why they have two different views on their father.
Hmm.
So that could be
Yeah.
that as well. But David is jealous after basically knowing that Carl and Marion have kind of become a thing. But when he gets to Canyon City, he's introduced to another beautiful girl, Denison.
Romana Dennison.
Yeah,
So she's descended from one of the big characters in the books. The Dennison family are some of the major protagonists in the series. I guess that's just sort of a hint at the original source material there. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that out.
yeah, yeah. So
And also Cyrus is the son of the closest thing the books have to a recurring villain, like Lee Crabbe, which sort of gets back to my point about how the books are more story driven than plot driven. Lee's villainy it takes place in all of about like 2 pages. Like there's no real foreshadowing or anything like that. We just kind of get the impression he's not the nicest guy. But the series, I guess, decided to flesh out his son a little bit more.
yeah, and it's also like the book that they're following along when they're navigating the world underneath. That's the book that
Mm-hmm.
the original Denison wrote, right, from the books.
More or less, yeah. The show changes a little bit of the original series' text, but yeah, basically that's kind of the book. We know Arthur Dennison, so Romana's grandfather, was a journalist, and supposedly that's one of his journals that the characters in this show are going by.
Very cool. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. So speaking on Romana Dennison, she was also very beautiful, and I was thinking like, okay, so Carl is a thing now with Marion, and maybe they'll develop another romance with David and Ramona, but they don't really do that. I mean, even though Ramona was being a very good friend to David, she was being very
Mm-hmm.
supportive whenever he was having those, fear of heights. He was walking like he was sidewalking on a ledge, and Ramona reached out her hand to pull him up. Like
Mm-hmm.
she was being a really good friend to him. And that scene, on a side note, that scene where they had to jump a distance so that they can sign the rock on the other side, I have to say, even though the gap didn't seem that big and anybody could probably make the jump, I could understand David freaking out about it. That would freak me out too. Like, yeah, it's a normal jump that you could just do on the street, but knowing how far down that is, I would be freaking
Yeah. Oh yeah.
My whole argument would have been, hey, man, you might as well jump because either way, you're going to have to, climb up and down back, through this damn thing again. It might have been easier on the other side.
Like they should have had skybacks flying around to catch these kids. Man, where's OSHA when you need them?
But I liked how Uno was also really trying to have David conquer his fears, and eventually he doesn't end up graduating or something. Like he's rejected, I think, right? And I thought at first that he just the fact that he didn't jump over the ledge to sign his name was going to be one of the key reasons he doesn't graduate. But it isn't that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just the fact that he gets rejected by the pterodons is why he eventually doesn't become part of the Skybacks. But when Marion comes to him and says, I'll help you, like, because Uno gives him the task of climbing and sleeping in the nest of the pterodons. Marion offers to go with him, but didn't Uno just get done telling her that she's on probation because she went down to like some of the lower reaches of Canyon City and she's
Mm-hmm.
attacked by the pterodons, and Uno tells her to confine herself because of that, because he's responsible for her
Mm-hmm.
safety. She's the mayor's daughter, but she kind of just gets away with going and climbing with David. And I get that she was trying to be a good friend to him as well. And it's also around that point that David confesses his love for her. But
Which is the most awkward scene in the whole show. Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
god. Oh, dude.
They could have just set up they could have just continued to develop a romance between Ramona and David, because I mean, first of all, like, I thought she was really pretty. I thought Ramona was all like very
Oh yeah.
pretty,
Beautiful.
and and perhaps it would have been predictable that they did that, but just because it's predictable doesn't mean it's bad. It's like, you have another romance that you could have instead of, only one romance and David kind of feeling like the third wheel sometimes. I feel like,
But no,
Yeah.
Marion had to get jelly.
She got very jelly. Peanut butter jelly. That didn't
oh
even make
man.
sense. Never mind.
It did in a way.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for the assist.
Yes, sir.
If it makes you feel better, so that after the miniseries came out, they did do a weekly Dinotopia TV show based on the miniseries for like a season. And in that show, Romana and David are kind of an item, but that's like a spin-off.
Okay, yeah, that does make me feel slightly better, but
Yeah,
I also heard that they changed all of the actors for it.
they did. Like none of the original cast come back. And they had to change the spelling on Zippo's name too because the lighter company threatened to sue him. But that's another
Yeah.
weird story.
I mean,
Yeah.
I thought of the lighter company every time they said his name.
Yeah. Yeah, they spelled it out with like an A-E-O at the end, so it looked like his name was French, just to avoid pissing off the lighter people.
Zbel.
Yeah, Zippo.
Oh man. I gotta say, like, this is for some random reason, this is reminding me of the fact that, as I was saying earlier, this show isn't really much about the dinosaurs. We see the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which might be the most famous dinosaur of all, only in one scene.
Mm.
And the show often references how the carnivores are hunting in packs now. But we don't really see much of that. We hear more and more about the danger, but we don't really see the effects of the danger taking place in the show. So, going in more talking about the third act, I'm just saying, like how I was saying earlier, I liked how the matriarch was putting people in their place. She called out her husband, the mayor, saying like, these outages, these sunstone outages that have been happening. Why didn't you tell me about it? And he's saying, oh, it happens here and there. It's just he doesn't take it that seriously. So what I really would have liked would have been like, him, if he would have like got killed off or something. Nobody in this show ever got killed off except for the villain. If he, or at least if he stepped down from power, something would have happened, and the people of Dinotopia realized they need better leadership, which they do, and appointed Marion as like the new mayor or something. I would have appreciated that. I don't have a problem with the happy ending that we got, but I just really didn't like the mayor, and I feel like the mayor should have been held accountable in some way for not taking the danger of sunstone outages more seriously. Either he could have been, like he could have been like a huge loss, like he lost his life and the city mourns for him or something, or he just he has to like step down or whatever. But nothing really comes of that. So
Man, we almost lost Marion a few times.
exactly, but
That's true.
But that's because Marion is putting her life on the line for the other people of Dinotopia.
Yeah.
The first thing we see Marion do is run up to an angry ankylosaur and yank out his tooth.
Yep.
All to stop the dinosaur from rampaging because he got an ache.
Didn't she almost get eaten by, what were they called? They're like the crocodile monsters.
Well, she almost got eaten by the T-Rex, but yeah, I think a mosasaur tried to take a bite out of her. In the last episode, she got knocked out cold by that pteranodon. Marion goes through a lot of abuse too, come to think of it.
Almost fell off the cliff.
Yeah.
The mosasaur, I should say, is a lot bigger in Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, by the way.
Yeah, so they're not especially accurate in the Dinotopia miniseries. Like, real mosasaurs had flippers and not clawed hands, and they didn't really look like crocodiles. The show took some liberties there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure the show took several liberties. That's fine. I'm just saying, when I think of mosasaurs, I think of like the mosasaurs from the Jurassic World series, and it's so big that it's bigger than the blue whale, which is the biggest animal that has ever existed in the history of the Earth.
That's an exaggeration too. Like, the biggest mosasaurs were closer to about like 60 feet long. I interviewed a guy who studies these things for an article I wrote a couple of years ago. But there were some small mosasaurs in real life, though. I think there were a couple of species that were only about 7 or 8 feet long.
Okay, all right, that's fair then. So I guess size-wise, they weren't so wrong in Dinotopia.
The size wasn't the issue. It was more like the texture of the scales and the fact that they had fingers and looked like crocodiles. But but hey, it's cooler to say, hey, we're getting attacked by a mosasaur than say, hey, we're getting attacked by a crocodile.
That is true. Going more into the third act when the main characters start to work even more with Cyrus, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess I couldn't really tell what Cyrus was trying to do. Like he got kicked out of court, yeah. So it seems very much like he hates Dinotopia and everybody in it. So was the reason why the brothers were working with him was because he gave them the impression that he wants to help, or is it because they had a common goal? You know, like
Well, he told them, I want to save this place, not because I like it, but because I want to save my own skin, something like that.
okay, all right,
I hope you like my voice.
that was good. That was really good.
Thanks, man.
Um, so okay, so they work together. They go to the world underneath, and I really like how once they finally find the Sunstone Cave, one of the brothers is like, "This looks like it came from another planet. Like all this stuff came
Mm.
from another planet." And then Carl basically says, "Yeah, this isn't from the meteor that crash landed. This is the meteor," which is really cool. I thought that was a really cool twist. At the same time, though, this would also mean that Dinotopia is located in the Gulf of Mexico, right? Is that what this would technically mean?
Yeah, technically.
So most of the population sound like they're from, I don't know, Europe or England. And part of what confuses me about this is in the beginning of the show, Carl was saying in court to the mayor, and before he was a fugitive, that he needs to leave or that they need to get back home. And David was saying, you don't know. How do you know that nobody's ever successfully gotten out? And the mayor says, "Have you heard of Dinotopia before?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Well, there you go." And okay, so nobody's ever survived leaving Dinotopia, fine. But it wasn't clear to me later on that it's a crime to try and leave, because that's one of the charges that the brothers face in court is
Mm.
trying to leave Dinotopia. If I were Carl in court, I would have been like, "So am I a prisoner here? If I'm not allowed to leave, am I some sort of prisoner?" Because that didn't really make sense. But I did like how he was saying, "You should do what you want with me, but let David go." That's the closest that I feel like the show ever gotten to say it makes no sense to be charging David with the same crimes that Carl was. But anyway,
I was just going to say, I think Cyrus's plan was to leave Dinotopia when he finally got the charts he needed with all these sunstones that would make him rich out in the real world.
okay, all right, fair enough. So
Yeah.
we need to do like kind of a deep dive on Cyrus, because it was so hard to get a read on him the entire time, because you can't tell like whose side he is on. Is he on his? It's obviously on his own side, but what are his what interests does he have in mind? In terms of the sunstones themselves, I
Hmm.
guess they're more than just a light source, right? Like while I was watching the show, I was trying to figure out like what is so special about the sunstones. Like, are they the source of electricity for this place? It's more than like as the sunstones lose power, the whole city goes into darkness. It's got to be
Hmm.
more than that. So is it what actually is it about sunstones? Are they a source of energy and electricity? Because that's what we see
Hmm.
powers a submarine, but
Hmm.
does that power like whatever else they need? Like that. I
Yeah,
guess that's
well, they're the source of power in Dinotopia in the books, and they explain it in the show. I remember Marion said in episode 1, "This is our source of power." So yeah, all the gadgets and gizmos in Dinotopia are run more or less by Sunstone.
okay. And the second time around, I think, or maybe it was, yeah, the second time around when our heroes go to the cave entrance to the world underneath, and they shoot Cyrus's flare gun, and it unleashes all the pterodons. So would was that kind of doomed them, right? Like that wasn't supposed to happen, but Carl ends up thanking Cyrus. He said that the flare gun came in handy, and he wasn't being sarcastic. He was being serious. But isn't that the danger that was unleashed? Because all the pterodons made their way over to Waterfall City after
Well, the Pteranodons had also been breaching their boundaries over in Canyon City because the Sunstones had been flickering. I think that was one of the things that helped keep them in place. But yeah, Carl's antics definitely didn't help.
I guess what I don't really understand about the danger of the pteranodons is that those are the dinosaurs that the skybacks fly on, right?
Well, those are actually two different species.
Oh, okay.
So the animals that are called skybacks in the show and in the books are species of pterosaur called Quetzalcoatlus. They had about 30, 35-foot wingspans, whereas the pteranodons were a separate species of pterosaur, slightly smaller. You might have noticed that the pteranodons had these big crests sticking out of the backs of their heads that the Quetzalcoatlus didn't really have. So those are two different species. And I guess what they were saying in the show was that the pteranodons live below a certain line and the Quetzalcoatlus or skybacks live above it.
Okay, no, that wasn't clear to me at all. I thought they were just all
Mm,
the same, and some were like more feral, and some worked with
mm,
the skybacks. So yeah.
mm. They could have done a better job of explaining that, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was just they were the same thing, and like some of them they can either choose to like you or choose not to like you.
Mm,
But I did notice like some of them had like different colors and stuff. Like,
mm.
well, I saw two different colors at least.
I felt like Zippo got greener and greener as the show went on in terms of his CGI.
He did, or like a bluish green.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't notice that. Gonna have to rewatch.
So once we get to the very end, they reach the world underneath. I know, JM, you were saying that we may have spent a little too much time there. I mean, you'd want to see more of the destruction that's going on in Waterfall City, but so up until this point, so it was Cyrus's idea all along to have these boys help them get to the world underneath, collect the sunstones, and then leave them there for dead. Like he had that plan all along, or was it that by the time they got there, he realized that the submarine would be taking too much weight, and he decided, okay, maybe these boys are not so bad. Like
Mm,
we'll all be friends after this.
mm,
Or was it that, okay, now that I found this place and I see how heavy the sunstorms are, I'll probably have to trick them, or I'll probably have to like betray them or something. Like
mm.
couldn't really tell what his plan was from the get-go.
I think his plan was he needed manual labor down there because he's a cripple. He's hobbling around everywhere. He needed these strong young men to load up the sunstones, and then he was planning to double cross them.
Okay, so he knew all along that there would not be, it would be too much weight to have the three of them go back up. He knew that.
Yeah, that's what it looked
Yeah,
like to me. Like,
yeah.
Okay. Well, I am glad that, I mean, some people might see this as a cliche, but I'm glad that they revealed that the father was there, and
Mm,
he saved them. And the way he dies in kind of a horrific way. At first, I thought he was going to suffocate and drown in the submarine, but he ends up getting eaten, right? Which is also pretty horrific. And that's it. That's pretty much the end of Cyrus. We never this character is not really referenced all that much again for the duration of the story, even though we're already in the third act. But the father character, he said he would explain how, like, what he did for food all that time. Frank Scott, yeah, he said he would explain what he did for food in the several weeks that he was missing. Did he ever say?
yeah,
Did
he
he ever
didn't.
say? No, okay, I didn't think so. I suppose that's the only plot hole we could say. I mean, unless the water. One fact I think I remember from middle school or high school is that a human being can survive 3 weeks just drinking water. So if that was not seawater, if that was fresh water, then I guess I can understand. If it was a total of 3 weeks that he was alone
mm.
and not going crazy,
Mhm.
then if it was fresh water, then okay, I can
I
understand that.
mean, yeah, but like he could have just said that. Then he made it seem like there was this elaborate explanation that he's not too proud of.
Yeah, they did kind of like, or he kind of did say that he'll, oh yeah, I'll tell you everything, but I bet your stories are better. But they don't really do that. But okay, yeah, that's that. I mean, it's just cool that they revealed that he survived all along, and
Mm,
they make their way back. Like they have to swim out. He has to conquer his fear of almost drowning.
mhm.
I
Um,
thought I thought it was kind of weird how they had the father carrying around Carl instead of like David, or not David. Yeah, instead of having David do it,
yeah,
because their father was weak from not having an actual meal this whole time or whatever he was eating.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. Like when I saw that,
Mm.
and Frank just kept offering to be the one to be helping Carl move, and David was like, "Are you sure you're okay?" But if I were David, I would have been like, "Dad, you've been alone and almost driven to insanity all this time. You probably need more help than Carl in some aspects. So I'll take care of him, and the three of us will walk down to the other side together or something." So yeah, that I found weird. And then once they swim to the other side, to the cave entrance of the world underneath, Carl did not seem. I mean, the last time I swam anywhere has been many many years, but Carl seemed to have no trouble swimming. Like he had a flesh wound, and it was bad enough that he was limping, but he didn't have any trouble swimming. So
Right, right.
another little, I guess, convenience to the plot, I suppose.
I
And
guess you can blame it on adrenaline, but that's the one
true,
thing I can
yeah.
think of.
Okay, yeah, that's true. So there's that. Um, then the show kind of ends a little, I want to say abruptly. Like Zippo is kind of like a hero. He's the one who puts the Sunstone in its place, and Waterfall City gets its power back. But then the show just kind of cuts to the mayor congratulating the boys, saying that he was wrong all this time. I don't know. Throughout the show, I feel like one of the characters should have said to him, because it was important to me that, listen, this kind of shows how poor your leadership is, because you wanted to give up on looking for these boys in the first place. You remember? Remember when they went missing, and you thought that they were just gone or something. So yeah, but he congratulates them, and then the two fathers meet. Father Scott meets Father Waldo. It was cool. Then the show ends with Carl revealing how much Sunstone they got, and the show just kind of ends there. I would have liked a little more of like an epilogue to the story, where we hear more about what the father went through, and then they each talk about what they should do next. Like Carl, at the end of the day, I feel like he should still have the idea that he has a life outside of Dinotopia, and that life deserves his attention. Like, is it truly the right thing to do, to like stay here or to go back? Seeing that sort of like a conversation of having such a self conflict like that, I feel like would have been important. But we don't really get that. I don't know if that is a theme of the TV series that is a sequel
Mm.
to the miniseries that we're reviewing. But the ending was
I mean, they talk about it a little bit in the TV show.
okay. They talk about it a little bit, but like I think that sort of topic, that subject,
Mm.
it deserves to be like a main focus, because it was a main focus in the beginning of the show. So now, like after having the show coming to its conclusive areas, I feel like a conversation like that, or scenes just showing how conflicted Carl feels about the place, would be necessary. You know.
Well, hey, he
Maybe they
gets
were.
20. Oh, go
Go
ahead.
ahead. You got
I was just going to say he gets 26 back. Like, what else do you need?
it. I was just gonna say maybe they're just leaving room for a part 4 potentially.
Mm.
The part 4 would probably just be the sequel series that we got. And I mean, JM was saying that they do talk about it, but it doesn't sound like it's really a conflict that Carl has. Like he just becomes a citizen of Waterfall City. I'm guessing that's just how the story mainly goes.
It's a bigger deal for Carl's dad in the series because his father is going through all of this for the first time, like realizing Dinotopia is inescapable and coming to terms with that. But as I remember, that was really only a theme in like the first 2 episodes, and then they both kind of get used to it.
Also, it might not be as important for him to leave now that maybe his most important figure is there, his father. Maybe.
That's true. He's got his dad back.
Hmm. Well, that is the ending of the show, either way. So I think I've pretty much wrapped up all of my thoughts in podcast fashion for Dinotopia. Not sure if there's anything else that comes to mind right now, but yeah.
Well, I just
Yeah.
wanted to give a shout out to the beautiful visuals in a lot of this show. I know we've talked about how the CG is a little inconsistent, but when this show's effects work, they work amazingly well. I love all those shots of the brachiosaurs pulling the farm equipment. I love the long shots of the dinosaur buses and the pterosaurs flying through Canyon City. Like, this feels like a very lived-in world, and it imported a lot of the artistry from the books in a way that was quite visually stunning, in my opinion, for the most part.
Very true. And correct me if I'm wrong, the population that exists there are just more and more people that accidentally came upon the island, right? That's how the population of Dinotopia came to be?
Yeah, they're the descendants of shipwreck victims. And that is also something I was going to point out. So they do say in episode 1 that virtually all the these are shipwreck victims who came from all over the world, but almost all the main cast members are white. Like, we do see some diversity in Waterfall City, and of course there's Unu, but in rewatching this as an adult, it did kind of bother me that very few characters of prominence were people of color, if these are supposedly the descendants of people from all over the globe, you know?
I think the only character from Dinotopia that wasn't white was Uno, right?
Like, we saw some extras who weren't white. I know the matriarch was talking to a woman who appeared to be, I want to say, South Asian. But yeah, almost all the named characters were white except for Uno.
Uno was the only like named character that was a POC, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Unless I'm mistaken, but you
Yeah.
know, when I saw him, I'm like, oh, okay, so there is like when we got his first scene was when I thought, okay, so there is going to be some diversity on the show. Before that, I wasn't so sure.
Yeah.
Overall, I definitely did really enjoy the show, and I would recommend it to people of all ages. But honestly, most of my friends probably wouldn't be so into a show like this. But I would definitely like recommend it to a younger audience as well. It's like I got nieces and nephews who might have a thing for the show, especially if they do like dinosaurs. Even though the show is mostly about the human characters and the dinosaurs are just there to populate the lore of the show. It was very enjoyable, and it deserves a solid 8 out of 10.
Yeah, it's not a show or a movie that I would, go out there and pick out for myself, but I definitely appreciated it for what it was, and I definitely would have loved to, or would still love to see them like show it in schools or something like that, just to get kids more interested in these type of things. Because I honestly, I think I already actually mentioned it earlier, but I feel like it would have made me more interested in dinosaurs way back when if they had showed me something like this. But as far as rating, I think I'm gonna give it a 8.5.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give it an 8 as well. I think it holds up really, really well. I do think this will probably resonate more with younger viewers than older ones, but there's something to enjoy here for everybody. Apart from some of the wooden acting and a couple of minor issues here and there, I think this has held up extraordinarily well. So, yep, 8 for me.
Very nice. Wow. Okay. So we're almost in agreement. And Realms, it sounds like you honestly speaking, which I mean, it sounds like you were the most critical of it, but you ended up giving it the highest score.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for what it was.
Last question before we move on to talking about previewing next week's episode. The whole half man, half human thing that Cyrus and David and Carl were talking about. What did you guys think that was? Do you think that they were literally talking about a half human, half dinosaur from way back, or was it like what more along the lines of what David was saying about like some entity who believed that humans and dinosaurs were equal? What do you guys think the half man, half dinosaur meant?
Hopefully symbolic, but that would be pretty fun to see if it wasn't.
I had no opinion on what it actually was, but I found it weird that they found it hard to believe when they're surrounded by dinosaurs and dinosaurs that can talk, and a half man, half dinosaur seems strange to you now. All of a sudden,
okay, we're down here looking for magic rocks, but we can't have half man, half dinosaur.
Right? And he's like,
Yeah,
once a scaly, always a scaly.
yeah,
Oh,
good point.
Cyrus.
Yeah, you bigot.
All right. Well, do you guys remember when we were reviewing Never Have I Ever, and there was that one episode from a different character's perspective? It was like the episode dedicated to Ben.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you guys were talking about how you were thinking, what if the show continues to do that sort of thing?
Uh-oh.
Mm.
Where's this going?
There actually is a show on Netflix that does exactly that.
Interesting.
Do tell.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So
What is the relevance?
okay, so this is what I had in mind for next week's episode. It's another Netflix original. It's a series, kind of a mini series, because every episode is like half an hour or longer than half an hour, but it's never like a whole hour long. And this is a controversial one, so brace yourselves. Even in the
All right.
name, even the name itself is arguably controversial. So, you guys ready for it?
Let's hear it.
The show is called Dear White People.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
heard of it.
I saw the movie.
Oh, you saw the movie. Okay, so you're familiar then. You're kind of familiar. Both of you guys are
Like,
kind of familiar then.
yeah, I saw the movie that had the same name that came out like 5 years ago.
Okay, all right. So okay, yeah. So there are 3 seasons of it. We are going to be reviewing season 1 of it.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right.
That just about does it for this episode of Movie Guys Improvise. You have been listening to
Chill with Realms.
Jurassic Mark.
and Faerhad Targaryen. Thank you all again so much for continuing to listen to us, and catch us again next week.
Thank y'all for chilling with us once again. Live free, fly high, chill energy only.
Breathe deep, seek peace.